Welcome to this overview of the AKAI APC64 Ableton Live Production and Performance Controller. On the APC64, we can do things like launch clips, launch scenes, play notes, play chords with a single press of a pad. Of course, we can finger drum. And we've even got a built-in step sequencer. Which can be used in conjunction with Ableton Live or completely standalone utilizing the MIDI outs or one of the 8 CV and gate ports. Navigating around Ableton Live with the APC64 is really easy. We can use the arrows here in the bottom left while in session view. We can move across the grid to navigate to other tracks, or we can move down to navigate to other scenes. We can also use the overview setting to quickly jump to the next 8 tracks. We can also use the encoder at the bottom right to navigate around between our tracks. We can navigate all the way over to our return tracks as well as our master. This is especially useful if we're in note mode and I'd like to navigate over to the drums, and then navigate to another instrument like the guitar. Along with being able to play the various instruments, we can also control the different devices on our tracks. So let me navigate over all the way to the master, and I'm going to launch a scene here. And while in device mode here on the APC64, I can control any of the racks on my selected track. So I've got performance effects here, where I can control things like a low pass filter or a beat repeat. These touch strips, let's stop all those clips, are going to correspond to our selected device. And they're also going to reflect the LED color of our track. So if I navigate over to the bass instrument, which is green, our LEDs are now going to reflect green. I can hold the device button down here and use our navigational arrows in the bottom left to go between different devices and different racks. We'll follow the blue hand in Ableton Live to see what we're actually controlling, and you'll see the LEDs are also going to reflect what the parameters are set at in our rack. So down here, I know touch strips 7 and 8 are going to correspond to this rack's 7th and 8th macro, reverb dry wet, and room size. Finally, we have channel strip. Channel strip gives us access to the volume, the panning, or the sends for each of the tracks. But as you navigate along between your tracks, you can use channel strip to have instant access to all these parameters for that single track across the touch strips. We also, of course, have the option to turn the touch strips completely off. Turning them off will turn off the LEDs and will also allow you to not make any simple mistakes you might make by accidentally touching the strips. The note mode on the APC64 can be configured to play melodies and chords, or even drums. The pads are velocity sensitive, and they also have polyphonic aftertouch, so I can use pressure to change the sound. The polyphonic aspect of that being I can play multiple notes and apply pressure to only a single note at a time. Each individual note has its own aftertouch value. Scales, chords, and the arrangement of notes can be configured. So right now, my APC64 is configured with the notes by fourths, something we can change in our configuration menu. And you'll also notice that we can use either the screen in the encoder or the 64 pad grid to change certain parameters. So let's change to a different scale. Let's try minor pentatonic. And we also have the option to show or hide out of key notes. In chord mode, we can play full chords with the touch of a single pad. And these chords will also all be in the key you've selected. In the menu, we have options for different types of chords. We can play just a typical triad, 1, 3, 5, or we can play other extensions and tensions, like something like 7th chords. In addition, we've also got function buttons at the bottom of the APC64 that give us even more functionality. Track select will allow us to jump to any track in our project. And this bottom row of buttons here is multifunctional. We can set these tracks to be our record arm buttons, meaning I can jump to any instrument, select it, and instantly we're armed. Let's jump over to the drums, and we're armed. If I launch this scene here, we can switch this functionality to mute. Let's go ahead and mute all these percussion layers. Bring them back in. And how about solo? Just the triangle. And everything back in. We've also got a row of clip stop buttons, which can be used at any moment. Stop the clips playing on that track. Now let's talk about using the APC64 for recording in Ableton Live. The recording workflow with the APC64 in Ableton Live is really intuitive. It goes along with the core principles of recording in Ableton Live's session view. Generally, whether I'm launching a clip, stopping a clip, or recording a new clip, everything will happen in time with Ableton Live's tempo. Usually things come in or stop on a downbeat. So if we understand that principle, we can record some loops now. From the note mode, I'm going to record a 4-bar loop using this sample. I'll press the record button here, which will trigger a 4-beat count in. I also want to press the encoder to turn on our metronome, and let's try recording a 4-bar loop. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to have to punch out of this recording, which will again happen in time with Ableton Live's BPM. So there we go. We have a 4-bar loop that we've punched in and out of. Let's go ahead and navigate over to the drum rack. Now I'm going to finger drum in on top of this sample, but finger drumming and punching in and out of record can be a little bit difficult. So let's set this to fixed length mode and set the fixed length to 4 bars. Now when I record, all I have to do is press recording once and it will automatically record a 4-bar loop for me. Let's try it. So there, right away, we've got an automatically recorded 4-bar loop thanks to fixed length recording. Now that new clip we created, I know I didn't play those drums fully in time, so if we take a look at those drums on the MIDI roll, you can see that they're a little bit off. Head over to Session View, hold down the Quantize button, and press that clip. Those notes will snap into place. By keep holding the Quantize button, we can adjust our Quantize grid right here on the screen. But I actually liked the unquantized drum recording better. Let's go ahead and hit the undo button and undo that quantization. Of course, I could hold shift and redo it if I change my mind later. We can also do things like double the length of a clip by holding shift and double and pressing the clip. Now we've doubled that clip from 8 bars to 16. Double it again. We've gone to 32 bars. And then finally here in our recording workflow, we've got this drum loop, and I think I can turn off the metronome now. I'd like to overdub something on top of it, and in this kit, I've got these vocal samples. So let's overdub these on top of this loop. To do that, all I have to do is hold shift and press record for MIDI overdub. Now any note I enter will be recorded on top. Now those notes are entered in on top of my loop. Just hold shift, MIDI overdub again. Now we're out of MIDI overdub mode. Nothing we touch is going to be recorded. The APC64 can be used completely standalone and also features MIDI output as well as 8 CV and gate ports. Let's connect our Mother 32 and I'll show you what we can do with the step sequencer. Currently, our step sequencer is in note mode. So I can plot notes along our sequence here. Let me just do this really quick and let's play that back and hear what it sounds like. It's not much for now, but it's good enough to demo. Now we can tie notes by just holding Shift, creating a tied note. You'll notice I'm selecting each note so I can see that note on the grid. But if I deselect a note, I can see all the notes on our sequence. And if we want to clear a particular step, all we have to do is hold clear and press that specific step. We have 3 different modes we can use to add variation to our sequence: velocity, probability, and mutate. We'll come back to probability and velocity in just a moment, but since mutate is exclusive to note instruments, I want to go ahead and use that first. Mutate is the percentage chance that a note will play at either an octave above or below its original played note. So to demonstrate this, let's go ahead and add a 100% chance of mutation to our notes here. You'll notice that the notes are going to get more bold the more they are likely to have a mutation on them. All right, so with some applied mutation, let's play the sequence. You can add it to those last notes as well. I'm just holding down the step and applying the percentage mutation I'd like to apply. With mutate, probability, and velocity, this quadrant right here is going to represent the percentage chance that either the mutation happens, with probability, the note happens, and with velocity, the level. So each time that sequence plays through with mutation, it's going to be different. Now we're currently using the step sequencer to control our synth, but the step sequencer actually has 8 tracks. So if I jump over to track 2 is set to drum mode, and it's actually sending MIDI information to our DAW and controlling my drum rack on MIDI channel 2. So now let's program a drum sequence, and we'll just program a quick 4 to the floor kick for demonstration purposes. Now hopefully you can see this, but these sequencer pads are also velocity sensitive. So if I enter in a note with a lot of velocity, that velocity information is going to be translated into the sequence. If I play a note softly, same deal. So let's hit play here. So hopefully you can hear we have a combination of different velocities in the kick just by me entering them into the sequence. In velocity mode, we can change by holding the step, setting it to a velocity that we want. I'm setting these to 100% velocity. I could go through, bring that down to 75%, depending on the step. Now we could, in real time, just enter in some more notes onto the grid, or we could play in real time and overdub on top of the sequence. To do that, all we have to do is record arm the step sequencer track that we're on, and now any note we play while the sequence is running will be recorded into the sequence. Now the last feature we haven't looked at is probability. Let's go ahead and unarm the track and change the probability of some of those hats. I want to change the probability of each one of them to 75%. So I'm going to select the step and select that percentage probability, and we could change things up and add even less of a chance of these notes happening. We can leave some at 75, we can leave some at 100, we can go all the way down to 3%. Now if I press play, those hi-hats now have a percentage chance of happening thanks to our probability feature. So combining velocity, probability, and mutate on our bass line, I think we have a pretty dynamic sequence that's going to change each time. Now, when you're using the step sequencer in conjunction with Ableton Live, you have the option to send your sequence to a clip in Ableton Live. It's really easy to do. All we have to do is hold Shift and press Enter, and that will create a new clip in an empty clip slot in Ableton Live. Now, in Live Session View, I can play this clip. the MIDI information is all there in Ableton Live. It did pass through the probability as well as the velocity settings, so we could send to clip again and we'd have a different style clip based on that probability setting. But it's an easy way to go from the step sequencer to session view right from the APC64. So we're connected using just 3 of our CV and gate ports on the back, and we're already controlling the mother 32 via CV and gate. But I also wanted to show that in our settings menu, we can set the type of CV message as well as the channel for each of the CV and gate ports. We can also send information from the drum pads as well as the touch strips. So let's go ahead and set CV3 to being fader 1. CV3 I've connected to our VCF cutoff on the mother 32. I'm able to use touch strip 1 to adjust the filter of the mother 32. And that's only the beginning. Any of these configuration settings that I have on the APC64, whether it's a scale mode, MIDI channels via my CV ports, custom mappings that I've made, sequences that I've created, chord and note mode settings, all of those can be saved into a project, which can then be recalled later on the APC64. Projects can be saved easily from this menu. And projects can even be chained together, so you can make even longer sequences. Hopefully you've enjoyed this look at the APC64. You can let us know what you think about it in the comments down below. You can also check out the full user guide available here on AKAI's channel.